The storm had been raging for hours, sweeping across the barren moon like an angry beast. Evan Cole sat inside his small repair station, the wind howling outside and sand striking the metal walls. He was alone on this remote outpost, a human engineer stationed to keep old Kun towers alive. But that night, something strange appeared on his radar. A faint signal flickering in and out of range. It wasn't human. And it wasn't coming from any known satellite. Curious. Evan grabbed his jacket and stepped outside into the roaring night. Dust stung his eyes as he followed the blinking locator on his wrist. Every few seconds the signal grew stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat under the storm. Then, through the blinding gust, he saw it a wreck, half buried in the sand, smoke rising from its twisted metal. It was a small escape pod, the kind used by alien fleets. Cracked open from the crash, Evan's instincts as a rescuer took over. He climbed down beside the pod, brushing off layers of sand. Inside, his light fell on something that made him freeze. A woman, or at least she looked like one, lying motionless among shattered glass and wires. Her skin was pale with a faint silver shimmer, her hair tangled and white as snow. Her clothes were torn, barely covering her, and her chest rose weakly as she tried to breathe. Evan knelt beside her, his heart pounding. "Hey, can you hear me?" he said softly. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Her eyes fluttered open for a moment, bright, shining, but filled with confusion. She looked at him as if she had never seen another living being before. Then her gaze went blank again, and she fell unconscious without thinking. Evan lifted her from the wreck. She was light, too light for someone her size, her skin cold to the touch. As he carried her back through the storm, he noticed something strange where his hand touched her arm. Her skin glowed faintly like metal catching sunlight. The glow faded each time he blinked. As if unsure whether it was real, back in his small outpost, Evan laid her on his bed and wrapped her in a thermal blanket. He checked for wounds, minor cuts, bruises, but nothing fatal. She seemed strong but fragile at the same time, like a machine pretending to be human. He gave her oxygen and injected a mild stim shot to stabilize her breathing. Then he sat beside her, watching her chest rise and fall, wondering who or what she was. The night grew quiet except for the hum of machines. Outside, the storm began to fade, but inside his small shelter, a new mystery had arrived. Evan opened a medical scanner, running it over her body. The display showed something that made him sit up straight. Her body wasn't entirely organic. Some parts showed strange readings, patterns not made by nature. She was part biological, part synthetic, something advanced beyond anything human science had created. Hours passed before she finally stirred. Her fingers twitched, her head moved slowly, and her eyes opened again. They were silver, reflecting light like mirrors. When she tried to speak, only a soft hum escaped her lips. Evan spoke gently. "It's okay. You're safe now." But she didn't respond, only looked around in fear, pulling the blanket closer. Her face showed no recognition of the room, of him, or even of herself. He brought her a small cup of water. She stared at it as if she had never seen water before. When she finally took a sip, her hands trembled. Evan asked softly, "Do you remember your name?" She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "No." "Nothing." He tried again. "Where are you from?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know." That moment hit him harder than he expected. He saw real pain in her eyes, a fear deeper than any wound, a person without a name, without a past, stranded on a dead moon. He couldn't imagine what that felt like. So he gave her a small, kind smile and said, "Then let's start simple. I'm Evan." She looked at him for a long moment, trying to form the words. "Van," she whispered slowly. Hours later, she fell asleep again, exhausted. Evan watched her silently, the glow in her veins pulsing faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. He knew she wasn't normal, but she wasn't dangerous, at least not yet. When he reached out to adjust the blanket, his fingers brushed her hand again. The light beneath her skin brightened for a moment, and a strange warmth filled the room. He felt something in his mind, a faint whisper like a half-remembered dream. A vision, stars, screaming voices, fire, and a girl reaching out through the dark. He pulled back, gasping, unsure if it was real or imagination. Outside, the storm finally ended, leaving the desert silent. Inside, the alien girl slept peacefully for the first time. Evan sat near her, wondering what fate had brought her here. She remembered nothing, not even her own name. But something deep within him whispered that her arrival was no accident. He didn't know it yet, but his touch had awakened something inside her, something beyond memory. The morning light broke across the desert moon, turning the sand into a sea of gold. Inside the small outpost, Evan sat by the table, his tired eyes watching the silent figure on his bed. The alien girl was still asleep, her breathing calm and steady. Her silver hair spread like light across the pillow. He had spent the night fixing the outpost shields, scanning for signals, but nothing came. No one was looking for her. No ships in orbit, no distress call. Nothing but silence. When she finally woke, she looked around as if she had never seen daylight before. Her eyes blinked slowly. Adjusting to the brightness, Evan smiled softly, trying to appear calm. "Good morning. You're safe here," he said. She didn't answer, only stared at him, her expression lost between fear and curiosity. He brought her a small bowl of warm soup, the only food he had left. She hesitated, and took the spoon with shaky hands, tasting it slowly like it was something precious. After a few moments, she whispered, "What place?" Her voice was soft and broken, the words clumsy, but full of effort. Evan pointed around. "My outpost," he said. "On the edge of Sector 9, she looked confused. As if the words meant nothing, he asked again gently, "Do you remember anything now? Your name, maybe?" She shook her head, her eyes filling with sadness. "I remember nothing." Evan sighed quietly. "Then maybe I should give you one," he said. He thought for a moment, then smiled. "Lyra, how does that sound?" She repeated slowly, "Lee, Ra," as if testing the shape of the name for the first time. A small smile touched her lips. It wasn't much, but it felt like sunlight breaking through a storm over the next few hours. She tried to walk, but stumbled like a child learning her first steps. Evan helped her move around the small room, supporting her carefully, each time his hand brushed hers. The faint silver light under her skin flickered again. He didn't mention it, thinking maybe it was just some alien biology reacting to contact. But deep inside, he felt a strange warmth every time it happened, like something unseen connecting them both. Days passed, and Lyra began learning small human words. She pointed at objects and repeated what Evan said. Water, light, safe, and Evan. That last one she liked most. At night, she sat near the window, staring at the stars with quiet longing. Sometimes she would whisper strange words in an unknown language. Evan couldn't understand, but her voice sounded sad, almost like a song. One evening, as he worked on repairing the generator, he noticed her reflection in a mirror. She had stopped, frozen, staring at her own face. Her expression changed from curiosity to fear, her hands trembling as she touched her skin. "This, not me," she whispered, backing away slowly. Evan rushed to her side. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe. It's just a reflection." But she kept shaking her head, her voice rising. "No, no, this face. Wrong." She fell to her knees, clutching her head as flashes of light pulsed beneath her skin. Evan reached for her, but the moment he touched her shoulder, the light flared brightly. Images rushed through her mind-burning cities. Screaming voices, white corridors filled with shadows. Her eyes glowed silver, tears running down her cheeks. Evan could feel something in his own mind, too. Like static, like fragments of a dream, not his own. He saw for a brief second a large lab. Strange figures standing over a glowing pod, and in that pod, her, Lyra, connected to wires. Eyes closed in pain, then the light vanished, and she collapsed into his arms. Breathing heavily, Evan held her close, feeling her heart racing. "It's okay, you're safe now," he whispered. Even though he wasn't sure she was, her voice trembled. "I saw something I don't understand." He nodded slowly. "Don't force it. Memory takes time." But inside, he knew something was very wrong. Later that night, when she slept again, Evan sat at his console, running another scan. Her biology made no sense. Her cells were alive, but interlaced with some kind of energy field. He found a small metallic node embedded near her spine. Something not organic. He didn't dare touch it, afraid it might harm her. Whoever created her, if she was created, used technology far beyond anything known to humans. Suddenly, the radar pinged once, faint but real, a signal from deep orbit. Encrypted, scanning the surface, Evan muted all transmissions. Hiding the outpost's signature, he stared at the signal and then back at Lyra's sleeping face. Whoever sent that scan might be looking for her, and if they found her, he feared they wouldn't come to rescue, but to capture. As the night deepened, Lyra stirred again, her voice faint in her sleep. She whispered a word over and over. Prototype 7. Evan froze, the word repeating in his head like a warning. Prototype meant experiment, creation, test subject. He realized she wasn't just someone who lost her memory. She might be something built for a purpose. And somehow, his touch seemed to awaken that purpose. He sat beside her again, watching the silver lines pulse under her skin. Her face looked peaceful, fragile, almost human. But he knew deep down that nothing about her was simple. When his fingers brushed her hand once more, her body gave a faint reaction like recognition. The lights flickered briefly across the room, and in that instant, he heard a voice whisper inside his mind. Not from her mouth, but from somewhere deep within her being. It said only one thing, soft but clear. "You found me." Evan's heart skipped a beat. His breath caught in his throat. He stared at her in disbelief. Unsure if he imagined it, outside, the desert wind began to rise again, whispering through the steel walls inside. A human and an alien girl shared a silent connection that neither could explain. And somewhere in the endless dark above the moon, something was listening. Days passed quietly after the storm, but nothing felt normal inside the outpost. Evan worked on repairing communication lines while Lyra helped him with simple tools. She learned quickly, copying his actions with surprising precision. Sometimes she moved faster than he expected, almost too perfect. He pretended not to notice, trying to treat her like anyone else, but deep inside, he knew she was far from ordinary. Every night, Lyra dreamed of things she could not explain. She saw flashes of bright halls made of glass, silver-armored figures speaking in a strange language, and a voice whispering to her from beyond the stars, calling her seventh. When she woke, her heart raced and her hands glowed faintly under the skin. Evan watched her silently, unsure how to comfort her. He had seen war, he had seen wounds, but never someone haunted by memories that weren't even hers. One morning, while cleaning the wreckage near the crash site, Lyra found a small fragment of metal buried under the sand. It shimmered with the same pattern as her veins. When she touched it, Her eyes widened, her pupils turning bright silver. She dropped the piece quickly, gasping for breath. Evan ran to her side. "What happened?" he asked. She shook her head, trembling. "It remembered me." He frowned. "What do you mean it remembered you?" She looked at him helplessly. "It felt like part of me, like I left it behind." Evan examined the fragment, noticing strange markings carved into it. They were not letters, but something organic, like veins of light frozen in metal. He placed it inside a sealed box and told her to rest, but when he turned away, he could see her staring at her own hands as if they belonged to someone else. That night, the dreams returned, only stronger. This time she saw human scientists in white suits, machines humming, a woman's voice saying, "Activate the prototype." She saw herself opening her eyes inside a tank filled with light, screaming without sound. Then, among the shadows, she saw a man watching her, a man who looked like Evan, younger but the same face. When she gasped awake, Evan was right there beside her, holding her hand. "You're okay," he said softly, but her voice shook. "You were there." He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" She pointed at him, her eyes glowing again. "In my memory. You were there when I was born." Evan froze, his mind spinning. He had never left Earth until he joined this station 2 years ago. Yet she spoke with such certainty. "I think you're remembering someone else," he said gently, but Lyra only whispered, "No." "I remember your eyes." The next day she grew weaker, her energy fluctuating like a dying signal. The metallic node in her back started to pulse with blue light. Evan tried scanning it again, but his equipment failed every time he got close. Finally, he decided to remove it, hoping it would help her stabilize. He used his surgical tools carefully, working with steady hands. But the moment the scalpel touched the metal, a surge of electricity threw him backward across the room. The lights flickered wildly, alarms blared, and Lyra screamed. Her body arched as silver lines spread across her skin like lightning. The air filled with a low hum that shook the walls. Evan crawled forward, shouting her name, "Lyra?" "Hold on." She reached out blindly, her fingers trembling when his hand met hers. The energy calmed instantly, fading into silence. For a long moment, neither moved, and Lyra opened her eyes. And for the first time, she spoke clearly, her voice strong and echoing. "They built me to destroy," she said. Tears rolling down her cheeks, Evan's heart sank. "Who built you?" he asked. She looked at him with deep sorrow. "Humans." He stared at her in disbelief. "That's not possible." Her memories began to flow, broken but real. "I was part of a project. To create a living weapon. To end the war that never ended," she whispered. "They made me to control energy, to rewrite life itself. But I escaped." Evan shook his head. "That technology doesn't exist. Not in any human record." She gave a faint smile. "Maybe not anymore." Her words sent chills down his spine. Later that night, Evan tried connecting the old transmitter to see if he could find any data about Project 7. But every attempt caused interference, like someone jamming the signal. He switched to the backup system and detected a faint transmission from orbit. Unknown origin, coded, but repeating a single sequence, her identification number. Lyra watched over his shoulder, her expression tense. "They found me," she whispered. "They always find me." Evan turned to her. "We can hide. There's still time." But she shook her head slowly. "No, they don't need to find me. They can feel me." Before he could ask what she meant, her entire body began to glow softly again. The walls vibrated as if reacting to her presence. Outside, the sand started to lift in small waves around the outpost. Evan's heart raced. "Lyra, stop. You're hurting yourself." Her eyes were bright silver now. tears of light streaming down her face. "I can't control it," she cried. "It's like they're inside my head." He rushed forward and held her tightly, his arms around her shaking form. "Then focus on me," he said firmly. "Just me, nothing else." Slowly, the glow dimmed, her breathing slowed, and the storm outside settled again. When she opened her eyes, she whispered faintly, "You stopped the pain." Evan smiled softly, brushing her hair back. "Then I'll keep doing that." But deep inside, he was terrified. Whoever created her had found a way to reach through her mind. And if they could track her, they could track him too. Still, as she fell asleep in his arms, he knew one thing with certainty. He would not abandon her. No matter what she was or where she came from, outside, beyond the moon's thin clouds, a dark shape moved silently across the stars, a ship with no lights, no markings, scanning for a lost signal. Inside that ship, cold voices whispered in unison. "Subject 7 has awakened," and somewhere deep in the dark, a countdown began. The sky above the moon turned dark that night, darker than before. Evan woke to a deep vibration under the ground, the sound of engines rumbling through the dust plains. He ran to the window, and his breath caught in his throat. In the distance, bright lights cut through the night, moving fast toward the outpost. He knew immediately it wasn't a rescue. It was a hunt. Lyra stood behind him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. "They've come for me," she said quietly, her voice filled with fear and sadness. Evan grabbed his gear and powered down all systems, trying to hide their signal, but it was too late. The scanners were already sweeping across the surface. "They'll see us," he muttered, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned to her. "We need to move now." Without another word, they left the shelter and ran into the open desert. The cold wind cut against their faces as the storm clouds rolled in again. Behind them, a line of drones descended from the sky, their red sensors glowing like eyes in the dark. Evan pushed Lyra ahead, shouting, "Keep going. Don't stop." Blinding beams of light swept across the dunes. Searching for them, Lyra's breath came fast, her body trembling as if fighting something inside her. She stumbled, clutching her head. "They're in my mind," she whispered. "They're calling me back." Evan caught her before she fell, his hands on her shoulders. "Fight it, Lyra. You're not theirs anymore." Her glowing eyes met his, and for a second, the connection between them flared stronger than ever. Suddenly, one of the drones spotted them, firing a bolt of plasma into the sand. Evan dragged her behind a large rock as the explosion shook the ground. He aimed his old rifle, firing back, the energy bolts crackling in the cold air. 2 drones dropped, but more appeared from the dark sky, circling like predators. "Evan," Lyra gasped, "I can stop them." "But it will hurt." He turned to her, confused. "What do you mean?" Her hands glowed brighter, light spilling between her fingers like liquid silver. "I can make them blind," she said softly. "But it will cost me." Before he could stop her, she stepped forward into the open, raising her hands. A wave of shimmering energy burst out, spreading across the desert like rippling water. The drones froze mid-air, their sensors flickering, systems shorting out. For a moment, silence covered the battlefield. Then they all fell from the sky, crashing into the sand like broken stars. Lyra fell to her knees, her light dimming, her body shaking violently. Evan ran to her, catching her before she collapsed completely. Her pulse was weak, her skin cold. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. She gave a faint smile. "You said to fight." He held her close, feeling her heart flutter like a fading signal. Then, in the distance, a larger shape appeared, an airship descending slowly. It wasn't human design. It was smooth, black, and silent. Evan felt dread crawl down his spine. We have to move again. But before he could stand, a voice echoed through the air. Mechanical and calm. Subject 7, surrender. You are property of the Dominion Project. Lyra's eyes snapped open, fear and defiance in her gaze. I won't go back, she said, her voice shaking. I'd rather die here. Evan helped her to her feet. Then we'll make sure they don't take you. They ran toward the canyons nearby. Their only hope to lose the ship among the rock tunnels. Lasers scorched the sand behind them, the air filled with the smell of ozone and dust. As they entered the narrow gorge, Evan's comlink buzzed with interference. A distorted voice whispered, Evan Cole? You were one of us. He froze, recognizing the tone. It was the same woman's voice from Lyra's dreams. Who are you? He shouted, What do you want from her? The voice replied coldly, You helped create her. Now you protect our greatest weapon. Lyra stopped, turning to him with wide eyes. You created me? Evan shook his head quickly. No, that's impossible. I don't remember any of it. But deep inside, fragments began to surface. Dreams he had since arriving here, white rooms. A girl screaming, a hand reaching through glass. He felt dizzy, his head pounding. They're lying, he said. They're trying to break us. Lyra looked at him for a long second, then nodded slowly. I believe you. Explosions echoed through the canyon as drones closed in again. Evan fired until his rifle overheated, then threw it aside. Lyra grabbed his hand, pulling him deeper into the tunnels. The light from her skin illuminated the dark walls, revealing old marking symbols of her creators. This place, she whispered. I've been here before. At the end of the tunnel, they reached a large chamber with an ancient console in the center. Lyra touched it, and the whole room came alive with streams of light. Data symbols floated around them like glowing dust. Even stared in awe. What is this place? It's where they made me, she said quietly. And maybe where I can end them, before he could ask. The airship's engines roared above, shaking the entire cavern. Lyra stepped forward, her expression calm now, her fear replaced by quiet determination. Evan, she said softly, no matter what happens, remember me like this. He reached for her hand, but she gently pulled away. I won't let them take you again, he said, his voice breaking. She smiled faintly. Then hold on. She placed both hands on the console, and her body erupted in blinding silver light. Energy surged through the entire canyon. Rocks vibrating, machines screaming as circuits melted. The pursuing drones disintegrated instantly, their remains falling like ash. Evan shielded his face, shouting her name. When the light faded, she was still standing, but barely, her body flickering like a dying star. He ran to her side, catching her before she collapsed again. Her whisper was weak, but full of peace. It's done? They can't follow. For now, he held her close, his eyes burning with emotion. Don't talk. You need rest, she smiled faintly. I don't need to remember everything to know you saved me. As she drifted into unconsciousness, Evan looked toward the sky where the ship once hovered. For the first time in years, he felt something like hope fragile, uncertain, but real. Above the clouds, another transmission went out from the destroyed airship's wreckage. Static filled the signal, but one cold voice survived through the noise. Subject 7 has chosen emotional independence, activating retrieval protocol. Somewhere far away, deep in space, something ancient and powerful began to move. And on that lonely moon, a human and a half-remembered being waited for the storm to rise again. The storm had passed, leaving the desert silent again. Evan sat beside Lyra's resting body, her faint glow flickering like dying embers in the dark. He had built a small fire, though the warmth did little against the cold emptiness in his chest. Above them, The stars stretched wide and endless, reflecting in her silver eyes when they opened. For a moment, she looked peaceful, like a soul between two worlds. "How long was I out?" she asked softly, her voice thin and tired. "2 days," Evan answered quietly. "You burned yourself out stopping that ship." She smiled weakly. "Did we survive?" He nodded. "Barely." Silence filled the air again, the kind that carries both relief and fear. Lyra reached for his hand, her fingers trembling. "They will come again," she whispered. Evan squeezed her hand gently. "Let them. This time we'll be ready." But she shook her head. "No, you don't understand. They don't stop. They don't sleep." Her gaze lifted toward the stars. "They built me to end worlds, not to be free." Evan's heart ached at her words. "Then let me help you be free," he said firmly. She smiled faintly. "You already did." But her voice was fading. Like a signal slipping out of range, the silver lines under her skin pulsed faster. Unstable, chaotic. Evan grabbed his scanner. It screened flashing warnings. Energy overload building inside her. "What's happening?" he asked urgently. Lyra looked at him sadly. The connection was never broken. "They're still linked to me." Before he could respond, the sky erupted in light. A massive ship appeared above the horizon, silent and black, larger than any he had ever seen. Beams of white light swept across the desert, scanning for life signs. "They found me," Lyra said, her voice calm now. "And they want what's inside me back." Evan stood, pulling his weapon. "Then they'll have to take it from both of us." Lyra rose slowly, her glow brightening again. "Evan, if they capture me, everything I am will be erased, including what I've become." He stepped closer, shaking his head. "No, I'm not letting that happen." She looked at him, tears forming in her shining eyes. "You changed me." Her voice trembled. "You taught me love, compassion, pain, all the things they said were flaws." Evan touched her cheek gently. "Those flaws make you real." The ground began to shake as the ship descended, sending waves of dust into the sky. Drones poured out like shadows, their metal wings cutting through the silence. Evan took position beside her, his rifle ready. Lyra turned to him one last time, her expression calm and full of warmth. "Do you trust me?" she asked. "Always," he said without hesitation. She nodded, closing her eyes, the glow spreading from her heart to the air around them. The light grew so bright that the shadows vanished, the desert turning white as day. The drones froze in mid-flight, their circuits melting under invisible pressure. The massive ship tried to retreat, engines screaming. But Lyra's energy reached it too. Every system failed at once, explosions rippling through the hull like silent fireworks. Evan watched in awe and fear as the entire sky lit up. Lyra stood at the center of it all, radiant and untouchable. Then her voice echoed through his mind, soft and full of peace. "I remember now," she said. "I remember why I was made, and I remember who I choose to be." He shouted her name, but his voice drowned in the roaring light. When the brightness faded, the world was quiet again. The giant ship was gone, turned into falling dust that glimmered as it drifted down. Evan searched the sand frantically until he saw her lying near the fire's ashes. He rushed to her side, pulling her into his arms. Her glow was fading, her voice a whisper. "It's over. They can't find me anymore." Tears rolled down his cheeks. "Don't you dare leave me." "Lyra," she smiled gently, touching his face. "You gave me something they never could have choice." Her hand rested on his chest. "And I choose you." The light in her eyes dimmed, but the warmth in her touch remained. He held her tightly, refusing to let go, whispering her name again and again. Hours passed before the first sunrise touched the horizon. The sky turned gold, and the cold winds grew calm. Evan sat alone beside her, the desert around him still and endless. But as the sun rose higher, a faint shimmer appeared on her skin. Her silver veins pulsed once more, faint but real. He blinked, unsure if it was hope or a dream. Then, from somewhere deep within her, came a soft voice. "I told you." "I'd remember." Evan froze, his heart pounding. As her fingers moved slightly in his hand, he looked up at the sky, the endless stars fading behind the morning light. For the first time, he smiled a tired, broken, but genuine smile. She was alive. And whatever she had become, she had chosen humanity. Somewhere far beyond the stars, ancient systems went dark forever. The Dominion Project had ended, not by war, but by the power of something they never understood. A single human's kindness, a single touch, had rewritten their greatest weapon, and on a forgotten moon, love had become the strongest code in the universe.